Hello all, welcome to this week's book review and summary. Today the book that we are going to review is titled Prisoners of Geography, the 10 maps that tell you everything you need to know about geopolitics. The author of this book is Tim Marshall. The book is all about how various elements of geography, starting from the mountains, the rivers, climate, the deserts, shape the behavior of the countries that we see today, how the cultures have evolved over the years, and how they influence the geopolitics of the world that we see today. He calls out that the history cannot be read in isolation, and geography has a very fundamental role to play in understanding the why and what happened in the history as well. Now, while technology has reduced the influence of geography in the relationship across countries, its role cannot be completely downplayed or removed, is his point of view. Now, moving into the summary in itself, what are the 10 maps that are being discussed in the book? It starts from Russia, China, USA, Western Europe, the Middle East, India and Pakistan, Korea and Japan, Latin America, and the Arctic. Now, starting with Russia. Russia is a huge country, as we all know, but most of its terrain is inhospitable with sub-zero temperatures throughout most part of the year. Now, that makes the natural resources available in Russia very minimal. It has a lot of natural gas and other minerals which are available to its disposal for the economic welfare of the country. Now, with respect to Russia's landscape, it is being protected by natural frontiers on most of the sides, be it the Arctic on one side or the Japanese Ocean on the other side. There is this South China Sea and Southeast Asian countries on the other side. The one region where it is not really protected is on the European side. Right after the crumbling of USSR, a lot of these small countries, Balkan states which have formed there, have taken sides with either NATO or the US, which makes the situation very difficult for the Russian government. Now, because of this, what do? Russia continues to engage with these countries either in good terms or tries to annex them so that it keeps itself in control of these European states. Now, big countries like Japan, Germany and France don't really make a lot of noise about these, predominantly because they are dependent on the gas pipelines that come from Russia and help them keep themselves warm during the winter. Now, because of all of this, the geopolitics in this region becomes very fun to read about. The other key point to note is that while Russia being such a huge nation in itself, it does not have a single warm water port. When I say warm water port, it is that the ports that are there in China are either frozen during the winter and they are not usable, which means that if it has to go into war with any of the nations, its navy cannot move out because of this situation. Hence, it is looking for a warm water port, and hence it is trying to engage with these countries which are close to the Mediterranean Sea and the Black Sea, so that it can access the Atlantic via this route. Now, this is the geography and the geopolitics of Russia as a country. Now, with respect to China, China was controlled by imperial powers for a long time, and hence the cities that have been developed in China are along the coasts. The heartland of China is still agrarian and it is not very well developed, and it is yet to evolve. Now, with respect to the borders and frontiers, it has a very long border with Russia, and Russia is also not economically very well developed in the recent times, which means that China has gotten into a lot of economic deals with Russia, with China having the upper hand. And also, there is a lot of migration that is happening from China into the Siberian heartlands into Russia as well. Now, with respect to India, we know that the Himalayas are bordering China and India, and hence a lot of tussle is not happening as much as one would expect. With respect to the southern side, it is bordered by the Southeast Asian nations and the South China Sea. Now, if you see, China was never a great naval power. But recently, what it has done is it started to put in a lot of military power into the South China Sea, wherein the USA is building up its naval bases as well. So China wants to send a signal. So that way it is engaging on the southern side. Now, with respect to the eastern side, it has its borders with Korea and Japan, where it has its own deal. Japan occupied China once, and hence it has a very different kind of a relationship with the countries in Korea and Japan. Now, the one thing that is happening with respect to China is that China wants to ensure that it dominates a lot of other countries as well, like US, which is trying to create naval bases across the world. China is also trying to do that. That is very well discussed in this book again. And with respect to Tibet, that is the point of contention between India and China. China has taken a stance that while it may not have a lot of control with respect to what Tibet is doing, but it wants to ensure that India does not become a part of Tibet does not become a part of India, or India does not control Tibet. Why? Because it believes that Tibet is at a strategic position on top of the Himalayas, wherein India can control what happens in China very well, and hence that is a stance it has taken with respect to Tibet. Now, moving on to USA. So the USA is a vast country with very less population. When the Europeans first arrived, they settled along the east coast, which had a lot of natural harbors and fertile soil. They used Mississippi as the trading waterway and helped build an economy. Now, initially it was controlled by the British. The western portion of the country was controlled by the French for some time. The Mexicans also had a lot of say in what is today's California, etc., and all of that. So the founding fathers acquired all of these from many such people and created what we call as the United States of America today. Now, post the Second World War, we all know USA turned into a world's greatest economic and military power, and they wanted to control a lot of naval bases across the country. They wanted to ensure that they have a lot of control in what is happening across the world and what other countries are doing, and hence they created all these naval bases across the world, and that has caused a lot of tussle between USA and other superpowers which are trying to emerge. Now, moving on to Western Europe. Western Europe is a fun thing to read about. The natural resources, the climatic conditions, the geography there in Western Europe are very, very suitable to create trade, to engage in business, etc., and all of that. So you would see countries like France and Germany could very well become big powers in the Western Europe area. In addition to having so many countries in itself, the Western Europe, it also has a lot of natural wonders as well. It has a myriad of mountains, it has a lot of rivers, it has some portion of it is in a desert in the form of ice, etc., right, and it suits for the economic development. Now, if you see, countries in the Western Europe want to be together under the umbrella of Eurozone, but not all countries are developing in unison. Hence, there are these small countries which are occasionally wanted to be bailed out by these big countries which are developing. This is causing a lot of ruffle between these countries, and somehow it is managing it for today. The post World War, a lot of these countries, big countries which were there in Western Europe, brought down their military investment as a philosophy. But recently, like we discussed, what Russia is trying to do, it is trying to ensure that the NATO or the US are not having a lot of domination in these countries, which means they are engaging in a lot of military warfare, which is forcing these countries to up the ante in terms of investment in their military power. Right now, this is the situation in the Western Europe with key focus on the Balkan states. Now, moving on to Africa. Africa, we all know, it's a dark continent. It has not had a lot of engagement with the rest of the world, but geography also had played a very bad deal with respect to Africa. The top portion, or 1/3 or 1/2 of Africa, is almost a desert. The second half of Africa is fertile, it has a lot of natural resources, etc., But the colonial powers and the imperial powers who were dominating Africa at some portion of the history, they wanted to loot the country and did very minimal work in terms of developing the economy as such. This has resulted in the deterioration of a lot of such countries in the middle and southern Africa. Now, if you see, there are a lot of rivers in Africa as well. Huge rivers are there, but the only problem with these rivers is that they could not be used as trading mechanisms like we saw in the US, because they have very steep waterfalls, and hence you could not use them for trading. But recently they have been used for generating hydroelectric power after the recent advancements in technology, etc. The one problem that we see in Africa is the large investment of Chinese companies in Africa, and it is kind of studied as a neo-colonialism that is happening in Africa by China and other such countries. Moving on to Middle East, the Middle East, the people live only in the periphery of the Middle East, right? The middle of the region is a complete desert. Of course, the oil is a natural resource which is available in abundance in these regions, and that has helped the cause in developing the economy of the countries in the region. And the United States has ensured that stable governments are formed here, and their military, a portion of their military stays here to make sure that peace prevails, and hence they can get the regular supply of oil on which USA is heavily dependent on today. But there are already talks that is happening on the recent investment of US into shale production, R&D that is happening, etc., which is triggering talks of US moving out of this region because of its lack of dependence of oil on oil anymore. There are talks about India and China could take their role because of their larger dependency in this natural resource. Moving on to India and Pakistan, the involvement of China in the India-Pakistan dynamics is widely discussed in the book. China is of course building a super highway between the port in Pakistan called Gwadar to the Xinjiang region in China. Once the super highway is built, it has a lot of road, railway connections, etc., and all of that. China can very easily move oil and natural resources from Africa and Middle East via sea into this port, and from there a land road which would take it at a much faster speed to its province than via the sea connection that it usually does otherwise. Looking at all of these things, if you see, Kashmir is not a simple matter of pride for India. Access to complete Kashmir gives India a window to enter into Central Asia or Afghanistan, and it will also cut out the connection between Pakistan and China as well. From that point of view also, Kashmir is a important talking point. Let's say that the war erupts between India and Pakistan. India would try to attack Islamabad, and if you see, Islamabad is very, very close to the Indian borders, and hence if there is an attack that happens on Islamabad, Pakistan would want to move out into another place, and they look up to Afghanistan to play that kind of a role, and hence both India and Pakistan engage with Afghanistan in largely diplomatic ways to keep them in their good books. Now that is the geopolitics between India, Pakistan and China. There are some portion of the book which talks about Korea, Japan and South America. For paucity of time, I'll cut it out. Moving on to the Arctic portion. The last portion is about the Arctic belt. The frozen seas, as it is called, has been in recent interest because of a lot of natural resources that have been identified in this portion of the world. The countries which border the Arctic Ocean, Finland, Denmark, Russia, Japan, the US, all of them are showing a lot of interest to own up a piece of land in the Arctic territory. Now, if you see, the Arctic region is melting, of course, because of the recent climate changes. Because of it, a lot of natural passages have automatically shown up, which means that the transit time between China and Europe can come down significantly. Of course, we don't want the ice to melt down because of the rising seas and the impact it has on low-lying islands, etc. But this is one thing that could happen. If you remember the Bering Strait, which used to connect the Russian part of the world to America, Alaska, there's a very narrow gap there. Researchers have said that it used to be a land there, and now the oceans have taken over. So climatic conditions continue to change the geography of the world, and hence the way the countries have emerged as well. The author then concludes the book by saying that well, a lot of history is influenced by geography. The recent geographical changes like the climate change will continue to influence the future as well, right? And hence the nations have to be equipped to ensure that they handle such changes, or at least be sure of managing these changes. Now moving on to the key takeaways from this book, we as Indians have to be very happy about the resources that we have been blessed with and the natural defense systems that we have, right? Be it the oceans and the seas in the southern portion or the Himalayas in the north, we should be very happy about it. Of course, people could argue that the creation of Pakistan is a bad thing that happened, and it is not really helpful. But if you see, had Pakistan not happened, we would have to deal with a lot of issues in the Middle East today, or in the countries adjoining to the Balkan states, right? Now, because of that, we are devoid of that problem, and hence we should be very happy about it. China's investment in a lot of other countries is a big worry that we all should be worried about. So, for example, China was trying to build a canal in Nicaragua in Central America to counter the Panama Canal. Panama Canal is managed by the country of Panama, of course, but it has very good relationship with the US. So to counter that, they have cut through Nicaragua and created a canal that can connect the Atlantic and the Pacific Ocean. Now, so much dominance by a single country across the world is really a worrying phenomenon. Is the second point. The last point in the takeaway is that it is not just funny but sad that the nation states that we see today in most continents are drawn by colonialists and imperialists who were dominating these continents at one point in time, and they created these states without understanding the nature, the people in these states, or the socio-economic structure in these states, resulting in civil wars and destruction of the region in itself, in the likes of South America and Africa. We as humans, for want of power and control over resources, have depleted such regions in the world. We could have done a much better job there. Now that brings us to the end of this week's review of this book titled Prisoners of Geography. I will catch up with you again in the next week with another interesting book. Till then, bye.